The moment you awoke today, you knew this was going to be one of those days. The air inside the digital circus smelled burnt and quite disgustingly sweet as well. Like a set on fire candy mixed with the odor of meat that had been thrown into a pyre. The stench was strong enough to wake you up, and you usually were such a heavy sleeper that you missed adventures. Heck, you even missed out on Pomni's first adventure because you just kept on sleeping. It was your coping mechanism, and the easiest way to not abstract, due to the sensory overload that was the digital circus. Seeing the stage area with its non-Euclidean architecture and heavy saturation, with more colors than you could count, it was enough to make your head spin with just a single blink. Groaning, you got out of bed. Your limbs felt stiff, and your muscles ached. Understandable, you had just slept for 20 hours. As digital as your body was, Caine seemed to take great care in giving your new bodies just the right amount of nerves to feel everything. The reason you had awoken was the stench. Something was definitely off. Did you wake up in the middle of an adventure? Slowly you walked to your door, looking for the keyhole. Outside it was strangely dark. You took hold of the door handle. Walking outside the hallways, lights were dimmed. It was actually quite pleasant. Were you dreaming? Nah, that was impossible. The digital circus did not allow for dreams. Sleeping was just a time skip to the next adventure, hence why it was so easy to use it as an anti-abstraction tool. You wondered if you used sleep like this in the real world too, an activity to merely skip time. You stopped at the balcony of the stage area. The darkness was present here too. It was super nice, and it made you hit your antenna as you suppressed a smile. Inside the digital circus, you had kept a humanoid form, but that was pretty much it. Your skin was rubbery and soft. It was colored in a sleek black, with orange rings that occasionally flared up with light. Your eyes, despite functioning perfectly, were milky. You had no nose, instead you had gills on the side of your neck and waist, out of which you could breathe surprisingly well. You had something you'd call hair too. It looked more like seaweed that was sprouting out of your scalp, making you look like you had dark green dreadlocks. And most uniquely, out of your head sprouted an antenna with a yellow glowing bulb hanging from its end. Your teeth were unbelievably thin, yet sharp, like needles, making moments where you bit your own tongue while talking or running incredibly painful. Jax always called you Fish Girl, but that's what you were, a human angler fish to be exact. You were dressed in a sleeveless shirt that exposed your tummy and navel to allow the gills on your waist to function properly. If they were covered, you quickly ran out of air and needed a breather. It was the reason you could sleep for so long, by just slightly suffocating yourself under your blanket. But it worked. That's all that mattered to you. It was probably thanks to your new body's nature that the aggressive bright colors hurt your brain so much. Looking down at the stage area, you saw nothing. Even the curtains were closed. This meant it was genuinely night, which were the first 8 hours after an adventure. Interesting. You'd never been up at this time. It made you smile. Being able to finally walk around without sensory overload, it felt so freeing. With your glowing antenna dangling in front of your face, you began wandering the darkened halls. You had a maximum of 8 hours to explore, and you knew how far into the night you were. It was such a strange feeling. You had almost completely forgotten the reason as to why you had woken up. That was at least until you reached the ground level with the stage. After descending the stairs, it was like walking through a cloud. Here, the smell was the strongest, instantly throwing your attention back into place. It was a little hard to focus with how strong the smell was, but that just made you more curious. Which only grew when you saw Bubble and a frantic Caine floating around a dark mass on a long table. As you got closer, said dark mass turned into what looked like a pile of pulsating sludge. And you saw Caine was floating around, grumbling to himself. Finally, once you were just standing a few feet away, you could tell the smell itself seemed to be coming out of a hole in the ground, not far from the table, with smoke and flicks of fire coming from it. The scene was quite grotesque. You wanted to leave and forget all about it, though as you went to walk off, you were pulled back by an invisible source. "Ah, Puddles! Good of you to come out of your room to enjoy the, You ended up in front of Caine and watched as he fumbled for something to say. He decided to pass over that thought for a new one. "I realize that you guys have been doing so many of my perfectly crafted adventures, but always with such little of an enjoyable outcome. So I decided to look into what you normal people do outside of the digital realm, to see what I can do to liven up the place. I am trying to conjure up what you call a Thanksgiving feast." You have just walked into my latest but failed take on it. Forgive me for that. You were immediately confused. Isn't he an AI that would be able to know exactly what something is just by thinking about it? How could you call this a... You cut yourself off before you got frustrated. Caine? Yes, my dear? He floated just above the ground before you, seeming excited to hear what you had to say. What number of attempts are you on? He paused for a long moment before Bubble, who scarfed down the disgusting dish, answered for him. 34 times! I'm not sure to count for him. Caine slowly turned in the direction of the obnoxious sphere, quite physically shaking before popping it with his cane. Anyway, I was wondering if you could tell me what it is I am doing wrong. I mean, usually it's trial and error with all the food I make for you all, and I just copy what succeeds over for you every meal, though... Whatever I make for this, it doesn't feel special enough. It doesn't feel fitting for the occasion. His mouth morphed into a frown. I guess I can help you. I'm not doing anything. It's not that hard. Not like you could readily cook anything in the digital world. There were a few ways you could think of doing this, though. You usually just think about whatever you're making, and based on the first thing you see in your head, you just make it appear, right? You asked, trying to get a gist on how he works to know exactly how to help. Yes, that is a way of putting it. I could have put it better myself. Why do you ask? Caine stood on the ground now, He was just a few inches shorter than you. It was kinda cute and a bit funny. So what if I just, I don't know, draw, and describe a few things, maybe how it is supposed to taste, and you do your magic? You could set the table and make the area look nice. Why, Puddles, that is a great idea! You took the words, well, right out of my mouth. Oh, well then. He took off his hat and put his hands in his pockets, pulling out multiple sheets of paper and colored pencils. He handed them to you and did a flip in the air in excitement. Let's get to it! He only shrugged and sat at the end of the long table. You were pretty mediocre at drawing. Not like you couldn't draw, but you weren't a professional. Plus, in the digital circus, your fingers were just a tiny bit longer than your real ones, and your brain still wasn't used to that. And so you started drawing whatever came to your mind. There was turkey, of course, but you'd better save that for last. When you thought of Thanksgiving itself, it got foggy, like every other thought about the real world. You know that you must have had someone you shared the holiday with. At least you think you did. There's always a lot of food, though, that you remember. You could see the platters and dishes in your mind now. Faintly see the area around it. The table, the chairs, decorations, the kitchen. Someone waving at you. They're calling you, but you can't figure out the words. Suddenly, you felt something gently bonk your head. You know you don't need to leave your head in a woozy to help me here. You just stared at Caine for a few seconds before quickly looking away, the bulb on your antenna glowing a bit brighter. Oh, sorry. I was just, imagining all the different things we can create together. I mean, what I can create for you to make. Well, you're doing a great job so far! What is this picture of? You looked at the drawing he was talking about, but it was just a bunch of deep blotches of color with tears in the paper. Quickly you crumbled it and threw it into the hole of fire, still on the floor. Nothing, just testing the pencils. Got a bit carried away there. Let me try again. Now you began actually drawing out different dishes, with little note descriptions about them on the side, while Caine set the table up with several dinner plates, silverware and decorative candelabras. You were just done with a few drawings and had Caine try out making them while you drew more. By the way, Caine, what made you want to make this feast different than the others? I mean, they're always the same. It's easy. Why change it? He paused for a while before drooping to the floor next to you. I wanted to try something new to see if that will help in slowing everyone down from going ooh, ooh, ooh. I mean, there are almost 3 of you on the verge from it, and I don't know what else to give you all. Maybe a real exit. What? I said, you're doing great. You're trying, and though no one likes it, it is still an effort. I mean, you have to take care of this whole place by yourself, right? Making sure that when something does go terribly wrong, everyone else is Safe. I think that is a pretty good description. Yeah. Kane's jaw dropped as he talked, his eyes rolling down his tongue and onto the floor. You had suppressed a laugh at that. The sight alone was hilarious. He always had such funny ways of showing emotions, with the lack of a face, of course. You know, Caine, maybe at some point you can figure out a bit more of your digital world to see what else you can manipulate to make this place more comfortable for everyone. You know, after this, of course. Maybe have someone tell you what you should and shouldn't do, so... You know, just a suggestion. Caine shot up and wrapped his arms around you in a tight hug, making your body stiffen. Oh, my dear Puddles, you're all so considerate of me. I can't take it. He seemed to be weeping in your arms, but before he could turn this into a huge cry fest, you quickly held up the last 2 pages in his face. He let go of you and read them before turning to the table, putting the papers down. And as soon as they hit the table's surface, a cloud enveloped it. Once it dissipated, there laid all the food, neatly plated. There were mashed potatoes, some green beans, cranberry sauce, candied yams, garden salad, cornbread, corn on the cob, and most importantly, turkey with stuffing inside, brown gravy on the side. Your eyes widened a bit, and you smiled again. The food he made with your help looked more realistic. And it looked good. Didn't look like the plastic-looking Bethesda food he usually made. And the smell. The smell made it all better. Would you like to sample them, my dear? I think you will find it quite tasty. The ringmaster handed you a fork with a bow on it. Of course I would. You grabbed the fork from him and quickly started sampling each dish. He had pretty much gotten the taste down to a T. Maybe it needed more salt. On everything. But that was okay. Compared to what you usually got, it was amazing, and it took you a bit of self-control to not make a bigger portion for yourself. But when you got to the turkey, Caine took the responsibility of manning the gravy, dipping it over your fork to lightly drizzle some on the turkey and stuffing. But you ended up pouring too much. Some of it got on your hands and the table, and you couldn't help but just lick it right off your hand. Even bent over to lick the rest of the table, but once you stood it back up, you immediately giggled. Caine's jaw was on the floor, and his eyes were extremely dilated. You also noted something else. A tent was bulging against the lining of his dress pants, which made you blush and the light above your head to brighten profusely. Caine didn't even try to cover it up, only picking his jaw back up. You both stared at each other for a moment. I apologize, Puddles. This isn't age appropriate. You narrowed your eyes seductively. Well, it is night, and there won't be any children watching. You smirked as your gaze shifted to the table. You walked over to it, and Caine obediently followed. You both grabbed the table and yanked it off, causing all the food to go falling to the floor. What a shame. Though, knowing Caine, he would instantly fix it once you were done. Having a godlike entity that could just spawn in food out of nothing really made wasting food fun. He soon, however, began to get second thoughts again as he floated in front of you. This isn't going in a very family-friendly direction, you know. You stopped him from continuing by pressing your lips against his teeth. Caine, we just wasted a bunch of time to make all that food just to throw it on the ground. So you better stuff me like that turkey to make up for it. You said with a smirk, pulling at his legs, making him fall on top of you. The ringmaster nodded profusely. And the only thing he said next was, "Yes, ma'am."
Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.